If you're in the middle of an adjustment of status case, one domestic flight could get you detained at the gate, and I have receipts from other immigration attorneys showing it's already happening across the country right now. I've been warning people who are in the United States and applying for adjustment of status not to fly domestically while their adjustment application is still pending. So, in my view, there are really only a few categories of people who should even be considering domestic flights or going to places in the United States where ICE presence may be higher. Those are U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, meaning people with green cards, and people who are clearly inside a valid period of stay under their visa. For example, that could be someone on an H-1B visa or an F-1 student visa. If you have not overstayed and you want to travel within the country, that is probably also fine in most situations. The reason I have my computer here is because I want to read to you some recent experiences that other immigration attorneys have shared. This is a private group where many immigration lawyers post their observations for other immigration lawyers. Interesting side note, a lot of former immigration judges who were removed by the Trump administration are also in this group. So this is really for the nerdiest of the nerdy immigration lawyers, the people who spend all day digging into the finer points of immigration law. This post is actually pretty concerning, and it lines up with a lot of what I've said in previous videos. The post begins by saying that 3 clients were detained while flying domestically in the past 24 hours, one at Chicago O'Hare, one in Denver, and one at Washington National. All 3 were pulled out of security lines and had similar facts. The post describes pending asylum applications, no criminal history, and valid work authorization. Is anyone else seeing this? That post by itself does not directly discuss adjustment of status applicants, but a lot of the replies from other attorneys do talk about adjustment applicants. And I've heard from other attorneys that their adjustment cases, especially for people who are out of status, are being affected at domestic airports. It seems like ICE may recently have increased enforcement activity, and some lawyers believe there has been a stronger push in the current environment. I'm just going to read some of those responses. One attorney said they had someone detained yesterday as the person was getting off a flight in Burbank, California. It was an asylum case pending, and an adjustment of status case based on marriage to a U.S. citizen was also pending. No criminal record. Another attorney said someone was detained at San Francisco Airport last week before boarding a flight to Atlanta. That person had an F-1 overstay with an adjustment of status case tied to a U.S. citizen spouse pending. Another lawyer said it seems as though agencies may be looking at travel-related data, including records that suggest who has an open application and then using that information in detention decisions. So this is not surprising to that attorney. There was also another attorney who asked, is ICE obtaining flight manifests in advance? And a number of attorneys suggested that may be what is happening. One lawyer also shared a CNBC article reporting that passenger data may be used in immigration enforcement efforts. So, based on these reports, it does not look especially safe to travel domestically if you have an adjustment of status case pending, especially if you have overstayed. People are being detained. For that reason, I would not travel internationally either, even if advance parole has already been approved. I also would not go anywhere where you are likely to run into an ICE officer or a similar enforcement presence. Some people are being detained if they are out of status, and according to these reports, that can sometimes happen even when other paperwork is pending. Before I get into what happens legally once someone is actually detained at the airport, if you're finding this useful, go ahead and subscribe so you catch these breakdowns as soon as they drop. Another attorney said, I just had a client detained yesterday out of Austin, and that the facts were the same. Another one said, I had a Russian national detained yesterday in Illinois. And I had one case involving a simple overstay with adjustment of status pending at LAX while the person was waiting at the gate for a flight. The final thing I'm going to read, because I think it matters, is that some attorneys believe enforcement numbers are under pressure and that agencies are trying to act on as many cases as possible. We've also seen reports of more aggressive enforcement in other contexts, which is adding to the concern. It is really a tense situation right now. So, listen, just because you have a work permit through a pending asylum case does not necessarily make you safe. Just because you have an adjustment of status case through marriage to a U.S. citizen does not automatically mean you are protected if you are out of status. A number of these reported situations involved exactly that kind of setup, and those people were detained and handcuffed while waiting to board a flight, or right after getting off a flight. They were handcuffed in the terminal and sent to a detention facility. So yes, it can happen. I do not know the exact frequency, but based on the reports, it seems like this has been increasing pretty quickly over the last week. This appears to be the newest enforcement push by ICE to detain more immigrants who appear to be out of status or who do not have clearly documented lawful permanent residence in the United States. As I get more information about this developing situation, I'll make more videos so I can keep you updated on what is happening. For now, even if you have an adjustment of status application pending, I do not recommend flying domestically. I also do not recommend going anywhere where you are likely to encounter ICE officers because they can detain people in that setting, and in some cases, they already have. Take this with a grain of salt, of course, because these are anecdotal reports, but they are coming from immigration attorneys who are representing people with adjustment cases in many instances. And for the past year, I have been telling people not to travel domestically unless they absolutely have to. Even if you do travel, understand that if you are out of status, detention can still happen even though you have an adjustment of status application pending. Technically speaking, once a proper adjustment application is pending in good faith, you may be considered to be in an authorized period of stay for certain purposes, including unlawful presence calculations. But that does not mean you are as safe as many people think. This is not the same environment that existed before. And once someone is detained, they will likely issue a notice to appear saying the person overstayed. If there is no approved I-130 petition yet, because the case is still pending, then you do not have that approved petition in place. An immigration judge may not give enough time for the person to get an approved I-130 petition so they can defend themselves in removal proceedings. That is very different from a case where someone already attended an adjustment interview or already has an approved I-130 petition and then the I-485, meaning the green card application, is denied later. In that later scenario, if you already have an approved I-130, you may still be able to defend yourself by applying for adjustment of status in removal proceedings. But if you are detained before the I-130 is approved, which in a marriage-based adjustment case means before your interview happens, the options may be much more limited. And with many immigration judges in the United States, your room to maneuver may be very limited. Anyway, I just wanted to make this short video to say that I was not just guessing when I said that I do not recommend domestic travel if you have an adjustment of status case pending. I would play it safe. Keep a low profile until your adjustment is approved, and then you can do the domestic travel you want to do. And by the way, you can also travel internationally after you get your green card, but there are still some caveats. I would talk to a lawyer before doing that, just to make sure you meet all the requirements and do not run into unnecessary problems when you come back into the United States. Follow for more updates like this one, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next.